Welcome, welcome. We have to do something that's necessary in the life of every emperor. Um, Game of Thrones had an element of this, and it's not pleasant, but let me set the context. When I was in first grade, I was not included in the gifted and talented selection of my elementary school. Why is that important? Did I want to be a part of it? Not necessarily, but it's about the principalities, as Big Perm likes to say. I noticed that a few average Caucasian females were selected to be part of that group, and they came and did a little presentation in our class, and I was like, when was this group assembled? The previous year in kindergarten, at the same elementary school, a group of sixth graders, this was at the time, by the way, when sixth grade was a part of elementary school, came to our kindergarten class and asked my teacher, in front of everybody, there was at least 24, 25 of us there in the class. They asked, we need to speak with the best reader in your class. Bear in mind, I was just five years old at the time, kindergarten, 4 turning 5, I believe. And within 1 second, the teacher extended her finger and pointed right to me and said, that one right there. There was not even a discussion. It was almost a kinesthetic instinct. And she was a big lady. So for her, moving that fast was a big, big task. So there was no question who the big dog was at that time, even at that time. But what I didn't realize at that time, that's the innocence of childhood. Other kids had to go home to their parents and explain what happened at school. And the children had to tell their parents, there's a kid that looks different than us that our teacher recognized was head and shoulders above us. And their parents probably asked them at the dinner table, what do you mean he looked different than you? Tell me what you mean. And then they may have described my facial appearance or slight melanin concentration. Remember, this was Minnesota, so wasn't that much of a contrast. The only thing that stood out is probably the color of the hair. And then the father and mother, or father and stepmother. You know how those step and half families work in the Caucasian communities. Probably looked at each other while the children ate their macaroni and cheese or seasonless whatever. And they finished dinner. The parents probably went back to their rooms and had a small discussion about whatever white people talk about. And then there may have been some calls to the school or some interesting parent-teacher conferences asking, who is this different individual that inconveniences us so? And so with that context, in first grade, if there is an organization that is to recognize the gifted and talented, why wouldn't I be a part of it? But you know what I was a part of in first grade? 4 separate school bus write-ups. Not even in the classroom, on the school bus. And if I was in first grade, my brother was in second grade. And this was the time when Minnesota winters were very cold. And an 8-year-old boy took the feces of a dog, fresh feces of a dog, ensuring that it would smear, and put those feces inside my brother's winter gloves. My first grade year and my brother's second grade year. And we stand at the bus stop across the street from our house with that same individual waiting for the bus to pick us up to take us to this school where the parents of other students have already had the conversations, the private meetings, because of the kindergarten teachers telling the truth. Because I earned something that you felt you were entitled to. I think in second grade they rectified their mistake, but in first grade, after 4 write-ups on the bus, you get sent to the principal's office. You get sent each time, of course, and the principal was one of the only male figures, Caucasian gentleman, older, nearing retirement, upper 60s. Of course, for a 5-year-old, very imposing figure. If my father wasn't tall as well, I would have been scared for my life in that office. But I've been in my father's office many times being disciplined before, so there's nothing a white man could do to me that would concern me. And on the 4th bus report, enforced by a playmate's older sister, he spoke to me with as much, I suppose, and not as much empathy as a Caucasian can have for an immigrant child. Possibly because I was still deciding whether I was going to be an immigrant that chose pity as a lifestyle or defiance as a lifestyle. So he wanted to sell me on pity. He said, I don't enjoy doing this, but I'm going to have to suspend you from the bus for 3 days. 3 school days. All that means is that your parents will have to drop you off at school. And school was not that far away, now that I'm older. How far is an elementary school away from your house? It's literally, you can't be that far. But my parents decided if I was going to get suspended from the bus, I didn't need to go to school. So my absence was conspicuous those 3 days in first grade. While my brother had to deal with feces in his gloves. Love your neighbor as yourself. Many times in our life we will have to be face to face with oppressors that feel entitled to what God has given us. There is no rule that says you must endure your lashings with silence and stoicism. And often your parents will encourage you into marriage and having children so that they won't have to see a free slave year after year, because it will only remind them of the pain of their own bondage. Old man, this kind of empathy can only come from a peer. And obedience can only be given by an equal. A slave cannot cheerfully give. Members of the Diaspora, today is the day I behead my father. I strip him of all his leadership privileges in our home. His name no longer represents our family legacy. I remove his authority over my brother and myself. I remove his use of the Holy Spirit of God as an enforcement tool. And in so doing, I remove the methodology he has chosen of acquiescence to the oppressor. His weapon against me is my financial inheritance. He can keep it in this life and the next. And may every cent that he has earned, both in principal and interest, carry the weight of a talent that he has buried. I'd like to introduce Hero Aquinas, a competition spike prototype designed in China. Again, meant for 60-meter and 100-meter dash enthusiasts. Named after Thomas Aquinas, or the so-called Saint Thomas Aquinas, the author of a book called Summa Theologica, often heralded as one of Europe's greatest spiritual and literary works. By beheading my father today, I formally cut myself off from being a respecter of European WASP ideology. I will speak to the Creator directly and allow His Spirit exclusively to dictate my words and actions, and especially my deepest motives. Not only for me, but for my brothers in the diaspora of all shades, and if possible, of all faiths. I do not know what awaits us once we cross the river of death, but my devotion to the Lord will be genuine, and the fruit of it will be as organic as I am allowed. with the resources I have. I take no pleasure in this murder, but as I mentioned before, some decapitations are necessary for the survival of our people. Consider Professor Varghese Mathai marked, as Cain was. No one who supports him will be supported by Texas Movement in any way. He is exiled. And the only release from this punishment will be his death. He has already purchased his gravestone, covered by the engraving of his wife's legacy. Let him have that to balance his accounts with God. Interact with him at your own risk. Rajiv is his own man, and he can do as he pleases with his life. I owe him nothing, and he owes me nothing. To my brothers abroad, you may not be called to move as extremely, but I want you to know what peace feels like at some point in your life. So may this execution heal you in some way. Class dismissed.